Welcome back, episode 2, Truth Bombers, the group chat gone podcast, where we call it exactly how we see it with our beloved Essendon Football Club.
Unofficial.
Unofficially, yeah, no affiliation.
No affiliation.
No official affiliation. I am Ben Borg. Joining me today is my good friend Russell Wilkes.
Hello.
And my other good friend Lachie McCluskey.
G'day guys.
McCluskey.
Yeah.
Cluckers.
Yeah, alright.
Episode 2, 2022 season preview. Now this is something that we have been group texting about for a long time. I think the day after we lost the elimination final, the Bulldogs, it was all eyes ahead. Yep, great year, wrap it up, let's get moving on pre-season. And today we're going to run through it all. We'll talk trade, draft periods, we'll talk contracts, we'll talk who we feel is our best 22 for the day, and then we're going to make some predictions and some big calls on what we expect to see.
Stick or Spud, the new segment coming up.
Can't wait, a highlight. Boys, thanks for joining me again. Let's get into it. I'll quickly go through our recap, our draft and trade period. So our big gains coming in from for this year. Ben Hobbs, okay, taking pick number 8 in the draft. Jake Kelly's come across from the Adelaide Crows. Alistair Lord, Garrett Donahue, and Patrick Voss. Those are our big gains. Our big losses, Patrick Ambrose is called time. Ned Carl's been delisted. Marty Gleeson, after old Noodles Gleeson, after just shy of 100 senior games. He'll be missed. I didn't mind having Noodles on the
Old Noodles.
He came in, played his role. Little bit, I think he had some injury worries in there as well. Kale Hooker, we bid farewell to. He'll definitely be one that was missed. I thought he was outstanding last year, moving to the forward line, taking first defender. Probably more lucky than good when it came to kicking goals. Made me nervous every time he took a clunk on in the goal square that he might not.
I had full faith in him.
Kicked a few beautiful goals around the body, no looking. Yeah. Lachlan Jones delisted, Irving Mosquito, obviously another one, unfortunately delisted, and we said goodbye to Zaka as well, David Zaharakis, after a pretty incredible career at the Essendon Football Club, and a real big constant during a pretty tumultuous time as well. So we also re-signed for this season. Tom Cutler has been given another year, Nick Bryan has been given 2 years, Kane Baldwin's been given another year, Matt Guelphy criminally has only been given 1 more year. Braden Ham, Tom Hurd, Kieran McBride, all 1 years. Andrew Phillips has been given another year, and Waterman has been given 1 more as well. Snelling, Dev Smith, BZT, Jordan Ridley, Mason Redmond, just to name a few that have all had a little bit further than that, and obviously our boy Jakey Stringer, and probably the biggest one, Zachy Merritt, and Darcy Parish.
Tom Hurd, has he still have a contract?
Don't know a lot about him.
Didn't play first year of his contract, got injured.
Have you seen
Played very poorly in the VFL last year, didn't know where to put him. They put him in forward, they put him back, they put him in the midfield, did not play 1 single good game for the year. Why has he got a contract? No one else is trying to contract him.
I'm trying to answer. Let me answer this question. Have you seen on KO that 150 years of the Bombers?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a bit in there they're talking about James Hurd and the fact that he'll never make it and he's too small. And Kevin Sheedy says, you don't cut the grandson of the guy whose name is on the stadium wall.
Yeah.
That might be what we're seeing here. We didn't believe in his dad, and look what he, arguably look what he did for the club, but did a lot of good. So,
fair enough.
And so he's been given 1 more year, and Alec Waterman has been given another year as well, which I think is a good call. Don't mind having him in the back pocket. Any thoughts, boys? Forward pocket, sorry.
Ben Hobbs, I think, biggest steal of the draft. Everyone had him in their top 5 going into the draft. There was big talks that Richmond were going to pick him up with their first or second pick before us. Good Bombers man. Apparently his dad's been a Bomber supporter his whole life. He's been a Bomber his whole life. They called him before the draft and said, if you're available, we're taking you. And to see his reaction after getting picked up was pretty special. He was ecstatic to go to the Bombers.
Yeah, stoked.
He does look a bit like Michael Hurley as well, in my opinion.
Is that a good sign?
I think that's a good sign.
He's been training really well, the boys say. Harry Jones reckons he's the most impressive that he's seen come through the club this year.
I think he's a young player that looks ready-made. His build, he looks like someone who could play round 1. Hard to fit him into our best 22 in my opinion, but I do see him playing a role throughout the year at some stage. Jake Kelly for me coming over. I think he covers a role that we really missed. Someone who can play on the small forwards. I'd be interested to see how he works with our back dynamic. I think we had a fairly balanced group towards the end of the year in particular. So
free listed, like he's a free agent, was he? We didn't pay anything for him.
Yeah, I mean, the talk about Jake Kelly is that he's very similar to Jake Lever at the D's. Came from the same contingent there at Adelaide Crows, obviously in different ways. So if he turns out to be, half or as good as Jake Lever, he's a welcome addition. But as we're going to talk about, that back six is starting to become pretty hard to get a spot in.
Well, look, I'm happy that ZBT might not be the depth player there anymore because he was the depth player there, and he, in my opinion, didn't quite stick.
He's not up to the level.
He's not up to it.
I agree with that. I think he's a player who not quite quick enough to go with some of the forwards. But then when you put him on the monsters that are a bit slower, he's just completely undersized. So not quite able to fill one role, not quite appropriate for another role. So I agree with that.
There's obviously a lot of belief within the club because he does keep getting games and he keeps getting the call-ups.
Hearing him play the raps he's had from VFL apparently just smashes it, but then doesn't have that next gear. It doesn't translate into that next tier up into playing AFL. So, trains really well, plays well in that VFL, but then gets to AFL. Maybe it's a consistency thing because he hasn't played games in a row.
I think it's a speed thing. AFL is just so much quicker than VFL, and then when it gets to that point, he's not quite up to it.
There's a big difference even at local footy between twos and seniors. And that speed, how quick the ball moves, how quick the pace is big there. I can only imagine what it's like at the top leagues. So we'll see. Time will tell.
Absolutely.
From the losses, again, some older guys, some older stalwarts moving on.
Is this the right time to play Stiff or Spud?
Stiff or Spud, maybe it is.
All right, boys, I'm going to throw some names at you. Everyone we've lost. I want you to say Stiff.
Yep.
Stiff for getting dropped, or Spud, they should be going. So we'll start at the top. Ned Kale.
I think Spud.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely Spud. Noodles Gleeson, this could be a hard one.
I think that Gleeson, probably you only have a limited amount of time where you're on as a rookie B list and someone who's been at the club for 10 years. I think if you haven't broken in by that point, at some point...
He had that breakout year and I was like, Noodles is never going to make it. He had that breakout year and I was so excited.
Yep.
And then having, was it an ankle?
Ankle,
yeah.
But for 2 years, he just has never been able to get back to that form. And unfortunately, when you're that size and you can't run...
Came in, played his role, but
good rollman.
Did nothing more.
Good rollman.
And arguably, well, that's all you should have to do. But I think, like we said with that back six, it's getting pretty fucking talented on that half back line, and I don't think Gleeson's quite there.
To wrap that up, Spud.
Yeah. It's definitely not stiff. He's definitely not stiff. Lockheed Johnson, the son of 3-time premiership player. His dad.
Is this similar to the Tom Hurd conversation?
Well, yeah, but his dad played for Brisbane, not for Essendon. Is that why he's gone? Definitely a Spud. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, I haven't seen enough of him.
I don't know.
He came in with an ACL. We knew we picked him up first year knowing that he wasn't going to play year one. Did not do much in the VFL this year. All raps said he did, but didn't even get a touch pretty much.
Sounds like a Spud.
Definitely a Spud. David Zaharakis. Not career, last year.
Spud.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Stiff, and the reason being...
Would you play him this year?
He was but he was asked to play a role as the sub in so many games, and I think he did it quite admirably. I think he did the job that he had to do. I think he's still got the talent, but having said that, I wouldn't put him on the best 22.
Do you think the sub rule extended his career an extra year that he wouldn't have got otherwise?
I think he would have got the year regardless. I just think they thought that was his best role at the end. And I can't argue with that because we're a younger group, we had to develop players, you had to give certain players games to actually develop them, and his role at the end of the day was something that was easily covered by these young guys.
And I'll miss Saka. I think he's been an absolute legend.
Oh, yeah.
Anzac Day goal.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
obviously the biggest one. And I think even in 2014, never has a fear of needles save someone so much persecution. And he was a big part of that.
He dominated that year as well,
Yeah.
because he had to be the number one midfielder. Like some of his he got started getting tagged by the end of the season. He couldn't handle, but that first half of the season,
early
he was unbelievable.
rounds, 30 plus disposals each game. He's doing very well.
Time comes for all this.
Yeah.
And I think...
I guess these last ones will be... We're not judging over the course of their careers. We're judging over the last maybe year or 2 years. Dylan Clark still at the club training.
Super stiff.
Spud.
Super stiff. I absolutely loved what he was about. I loved the attack on the ball. He is that Matt Guelphy, Sam Durham, Dylan Clark, Will Snelling. That is the breed of bombers I want to see. I thought his two-way running was really good. He piped up, kicked a couple of goals. I just thought he potentially wasn't given much of an opportunity to really cement a side within the 22. And I think that inconsistency of up and down counted against him. He had some games, I know he's had his injury trouble. I think it was last year where he played that run with play. He played that shutdown role, and he monstered blokes that he had no business.
2019 when he was tagging, that was unbelievable. He took down, like you said, some of the biggest blokes in the game.
Now he is still training with the club over summer, and I am
with one list spot left.
Yeah, I would like to see him.
I'm going to go
on the list.
A little bit stiff just to see some of the spuds that we re-signed on one-year deals that I think we could have got rid of to make room for him.
Look, I think the game's changed from 2019. It's a different role if you're a midfielder. You're a little bit smaller, a little bit quicker. And I would say that the potential tagging role that he did play so well, we just don't have a spot in our team for that. I don't think there's a role for him. He can't kick 40 metres. He's poor disposal, if I'm quite honest.
Is he?
Hey, that's Truth Bombers podcast.
Very poor.
We'll tell you how it is.
So I think even as a small forward, I don't think he's going to be an impact player. So where do you play him?
And maybe Lockie's right. Maybe the signal there with Dylan Clark is we don't want to play a defensive game plan anymore.
Yeah,
we don't want to lose a midfielder simply just to shut down another midfielder. We want the boys on the park pressing and attacking forward and takes big calls to make big changes. So I think it's stiff.
Patrick Ambrose, stiff or spud?
Look, I'm going to go with spud. I think another one probably similar to Zert Thatcher. Great Resi's player. Tore it up in the VFL. Just couldn't quite get comfortable with the game. And I think another one that's starting to age out a little bit there as well.
I personally think he was stiff, but his role in the back line, there was no space for him. They tried to play him forward at the very end of the season, and I feel like that wasn't his role.
He's a guy that was kicking 5 or 6 goals.
He dominated the VFL, but
I'm going to say a bit stiff because I don't think they even gave him an opportunity. I know it was hard to get in, but we were at some points quite thin in the middle of the season where we didn't have many people on the roster left that weren't injured. He was never given one senior go at it. He was injured, yes. He came back and they decided to revamp the back line, which didn't fit him. But he was unbelievable before he got injured and never got that second chance.
Well, the fact that Gleeson played in that final, I'm sure Ambrose could have taken that spot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like Spud is such a harsh...
That's the podcast, man.
It's harsh. It's too harsh.
We can't go almost.
Are we let these boys down easily?
I thought stiff or almost spud
listening.
didn't quite roll off the tongue, so we almost stiff or spud. And we're talking about not careers.
Good call, bad call. Yeah, we can only be judged.
It's my segment. I'll call it.
Yeah, true. I mean, look, you're only as good as your last performance, right? And like we said, you can't have one good year and rest on the laurels.
All right, Kale Hooker. Last season.
I'm going to say
Not
stiff.
career.
I'm going to say stiff.
I agree, stiff.
I think given what we're lacking, having a big body up forward, someone to take the number one defender, I think we're going to miss that this year. I probably would have liked to have seen him get at least one more. Get Harry Jones another 10, 12, 15 games, running and jumping at it, giving some size, some time to put some size on. I think we'll miss Hooksy.
I don't know if they told him, you're not going to play a full season. Do you just want to have a part-time role? We'll give you an extra contract. I don't think that happened, but that's what I would have been pretty clear with. If you want to go on, when she apparently did want to go on again, and said to him, look, we'll give you another year, but you might not play 22 games.
There's a bit of word that he was pretty dirty on the club with the Tom Bell Chambers goodbye game saga and issue from the year before.
And Hurley, I think he was dirty with Hurley not being given a proper role a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Taking over the leadership group, both of them.
Yeah.
So who knows? One day we're gonna have to get someone from the club. We can blur their. If you're from the club and you're listening, we can pixelate your face.
Yeah.
We just love to know what's going on.
Voice changes. I guess that goes on one of my topics. Mick Hurley, does he play this season? Should he play this season?
I'm going to go with yes. I think he will play. I think he won't play at the start of the season. Definitely not for round one. I think he'll.
Is it a pity play?
No, I think they have trained him forward, and I believe that he could play a role forward for a season, and that is to protect someone like Harrison Jones. Potentially someone like Peter Wright, who maybe can't take that big body defender, gets pushed under the ball a little bit too easy. I think he can play right.
I think emotionally, I want to see him back. I think he's been terribly unlucky in his recovery back, but I also think he's missed a lot of football.
He only started running this year.
And there's a lot of... You lose conditioning.
What do you lose, like 10 or 12 kilos?
Yeah,
and he's pretty much had to restart again, and only starting running at this year.
And he's another player in his 30s now, right? So
it's going to take him longer to recondition.
Yeah, and I don't know that, and I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see him back. I think if he's back to a level where he's at AFL standard, he is in our best 22. I just can't see it legitimately happening. I hope I'm wrong.
He might get back to a point where he could play, but I think Truck has demonstrated he's not giving out any games to people just because you've been around for a long time and you deserve to get a farewell game like the
It's a
Bell
rebuild.
Chambers thing.
It's a rebuild. We're in a
Look
rebuild.
at Melbourne and like Jones, what a clubman deserved to be at least the sub in the grand final. They wouldn't even do it.
Yes,
he deserved to be in that grand final, even as a sub that wasn't even played to get a medal. For all the amount of work he did for the club and went through all the.
There's also
I think
the
they're moving
pregnant
to
wife part of that conversation as well.
I think they're moving away from gifting out those ceremony games though. If
you've got something to lose, it becomes a tougher conversation, and that's probably the biggest
issue.
We
lose
Bell
Bell
Chambers.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think unless you're Carlton and you get Mark Murphy to 300 when he never should have.
Well, that wasn't even a struggle. They even thought like, why aren't you playing? Just getting his 300, and they were nowhere. They're not making in finals, and there was a time when people thought he might not get there.
They were pity games.
Well, that became more of a play for what was his name? What was the coach's name? Carlton.
Teague.
Yeah, David Teague to take a stance and do something and show some sort of hard line. Obviously, the way it's ended, he probably now looking back should have just given him as many games as he needed to get there and not made such a big deal of it. But is it the Essendon Football Club that we're talking about?
we can have pot shots.
Oh, for sure. We've got nothing wrong with taking pot shots at the Carlton Football Club, that's for sure. Boys, best 22 for the season. Now, this was tough. I found this really hard to do. I found myself really wanting to include some blokes in here because I like them.
Yep.
And I also was a little bit hesitant on including new names that we kind of haven't seen yet. So I thought let's just run through. We'll start with kind of our best back six. I've got, and in brackets here, Mason Redmond as my back pocket. Michael Hurley, if he's fit. Jaden Laverde, loved his season last year. Halfback, Dyson Heppel, Jordan Ridley, and Nick Hind for me for my back six.
I've got Kelly, Ridley, Redmond, Hind, Laverde, and Stewart. I think they all have roles to play. There's definitely a couple of others that didn't make the list that are really stiff, but yeah, they're my best back six.
I guess my only one different is I've subbed out Mick Hurley and Stewart. I don't want to see him in the back line at all at 20. I know we disagree on that one. And I put in Francis as that number one back again. I want to see him step up and consistently play in the back line.
Mason Redmond was a name that I really want to fit him in somewhere. Yep. I love Red Dog. I love what he's about.
He really stepped up last year.
Yeah, he stepped up. I love that handball on the run, pot shot from outside 50 kind of.
Yeah.
And he just looks like a bloke that's having fun with his footy. But I think he is definitely one of those on the cusp players with a Jake Kelly coming in. Potentially we'll get to some of our mids getting pushed out there, might start to come into the back line. I think he's going to be one of those fringe players. And I think it's going to be week to week. You need to keep having good weeks in order to keep getting your spot. And I unfortunately feel for Mace that 1 or 2 average games might see him taking a step back and having to earn his way back up.
Speaking of Redmond, I think he is in our best back six. And I think that he plays the role that if Hines having a day where he's a bit shut out of it, he can play that rebounding defender. He can also shut down a small, medium type. And I love that, he does actually get forward and kick a few goals. Yeah, a few outside 50 goals. Definitely a highlight.
Cool. All right.
Centers?
Yeah, midline. I got Nick Cox on one wing, Zachy Merritt in the guts, and I put Devon Smith on the other wing.
I went Cox, Merritt, and Caldwell.
Ooh.
I've got all my mids in a group, so I'm going to sort of ruin the flow a little bit. But Draper is the ruck. I've got Parrish and Merritt in the guts. Obviously, Stringer won't play that role all game, but would start in the centre bounce. And then I've got Cox, McGrath, and Caldwell, who will also rotate through there, potentially from a wing. Yeah.
Draper for me in the ruck, obviously. That's a no-brainer. And I've got Parrish and McGrath following.
See, I think this one I've gone a little bit different. Like Draper and Parrish as the followers, and I've included Stringer for that first bounce.
Yeah, nice. Stringer's a hard one to place. He's going to be somewhere.
Yeah. I want to see him starting in that at the start of every quarter. I want to see him in the guts, get in there, get that first goal.
Every single centre bounce, if we go off last season, he should be starting.
Yeah. Go back, drift into the forward line, but he needs to be there for those bounces.
Do you line Andy McGrath up at half forward and just have him switch out?
I was actually thinking that, and I went on putting McGrath on the bench and switching that a bit, but yeah, I'd agree with that.
I'd almost put McGrath to a half-back flank, which he played at the start of his career. That's how they developed him.
They want him more mid. They keep saying they want to give him more midfield time.
Yeah, if I was to find another role for him, it'd be off half-back.
Who comes out then?
Well, then obviously Mason Redmond would be the unlucky one in my opinion.
Okay. Half forward line, I've got Archie Perkins. I've got Big Peter Wright, centre half forward, and Tipper. And then a full forward line, again, no particular order. Will Snelling, Harry Jones, Drake Stringer for me.
I've got a big 2 metre, Coxie, Langford on the half forward. Then I've got Tipper, Jones, and Waterman.
Waters, best 22. Ooh. That's a big call.
That's a huge call. Big call?
Big call. Waters, you're starting.
For me, the forwards, Stringer, Tipper if he's fit. So I know that he's got a little calf injury at the moment, so he won't start the season. But I think he's in our best 22. That's official.
That's official.
I've got big call, Francis playing in our forward line.
No.
It's my big call. It's yours, Russ.
You call
I believe he can play a role. So I think he can take a little bit of pressure off. I've also got Jones, Snelling, and Langford. I think he can play as a second tall. I think between him and Jones being the taller players, I haven't fit in right to this. I think Langford can play as a third tall. Stringer plays more as a small than a big.
Did you put Langford in your...
I have Langford on my bench.
See, for me, he has to play. He's
probably the best player as well.
He's the best set shot we have.
I think he starts on the bench.
Stiff on Tipper. Tipper's the best set shot.
Oh,
second best.
Jones.
It's pretty close, to be honest. And you know how much I've been anti-Langford. I wanted him delisted a long time ago and laughed at the thought that he was ever going to be a good. And now I need him in the forward line.
Yep.
I've been a big Kyle Langford fan for years.
Many disagreements with you and me there.
I've come off him a little bit ever since Russ paid for him to do one of those cameo congratulations, and which you referred to Kat as Kate. So, so I've been off him a little bit.
Hangers, we won our $40 back.
Look, my interchange, I've got Langers on the interchange purely because I think he is in our best 22. I just think he's going to be another one. He could play a big body mid. He could play a big body forward. I think you probably just wait and see how a game develops and then put Langers where you need him. Yep. And on the bench with him, I have Jake Kelly, Jai Caldwell, and Matt Guelphy.
So, Russ, do you want to go?
Yeah, my interchange, I had James Kelly again just as a chop out. I couldn't quite fit him in my back six.
Jake Kelly.
I don't know why I wrote James. He's new. All right, you get around. McGrath, Perko, and Durham. as my interchange.
Oh,
Yeah.
Durham.
And then my sub was Hobbsy, new kid. Want to give him a go as soon as possible.
Round 1.
Round 1, I'd put him in. From
Round
what
one
you
was
said,
the
I've
Saints.
heard that he's good. He's good to go. I'd want to put him as a sub and sort of give him the time.
We got the Saints in that first pracky match. I think you definitely...
Emergency and Dylan Shield.
Coming off the bench for me, Heppel, Shield. I've got Bryan. Nick Bryan.
Nick Bryan,
Okay.
St. Kevin's
So,
boy.
another backup ruckman for Draper. Like, who is going to play that role
Yep.
if he doesn't, is what I'm thinking. I've also got Perkins, and I've got Smith as a sub. And put him on a wing. I don't think he can play a wing.
I was pretty close to putting the Smith as a sub for me.
Yeah. Emergencies, I've got Zach Reed, Sam Durham, Aaron Francis, and Dylan Shield. Take your pick of any of those.
So we all are in agreement that Shield's not in the best 22.
I don't think
Or
Shield's
even
in that
close
best
to it.
22
He's
at
not
the
even a
moment.
sub.
For me, he comes off the bench. I think he can
I thought you had
play
him.
some sort of role, potentially as a wingman, and I think he could give a chop out potentially in the middle. But
Look,
it
he
depends
could
on
definitely-
rotations.
Look, I like Dylan Shield. I think when he's on, I think his foot speed is great. I think his disposal could be a little bit cleaner, and his goal
A little bit.
A little bit,
His
yeah.
goal kicking
That's a
needs
big.
work.
That's a big call.
His goal kicking
It's
needs
only
work.
just a little bit bad.
But I think having that, a left footer in the side as well gives it a little bit of value.
Merritt's a left footer as well.
Yeah. I think probably plays on a wing if he comes in. Yeah. Boys, thoughts on players ready to have a breakout year this year? Lachie, I'll start with you.
All right, Jai Caldwell. I think we got him from GWS to play a big-bodied midfielder role.
From him lacking for so long.
Lacking forever. I think he had an incredible preseason last year, and I think he was going to have a breakout season. Got injured, came back from a hamstring, did it again. So he was just crippled last year by injury.
Still no room in the midfield when he came back too. We were all thinking.
I think we tried to bring Shield in as well,
At the same
McGrath.
similar times,
So it's pretty much Caldwell, Shield, McGrath, all coming back from a long time out that we all tried to fit in. I think he can be that player. And the other one, I just want to finish this, Kane Baldwin. So I've got him as a potential full forward threat. Supposedly he had a really good year last year in the VFL. Previous to that, knee reconstruction. And we're desperate for a big forward, aren't we? So apart from Jones, it's still developing. Maybe for me it's Francis, but maybe it's Peter Wright playing that other tall. I think he can have a really big year.
Russ?
For me, Harry Jones and Francis. I don't know if it's a big prediction for Francis or it's just me hoping.
Yep.
Because I've been hoping for the last time. I've talked about it a few times now that I really think he's a massive talent. If he can just get some consistency, some game time, and get his head straight a little bit.
Forward?
Back. Seeing him play his first season in VFL, where you just take a hanger and then run the whole field and kick goals against, I know it's VFL, but just coming out in your breakout season, and he shows glimpses of being that footballer, picked up pick 4 or pick 5 or something. This has to be the year he breaks out, otherwise, for me, it's over.
I've got Matt Guelphy and Sam Durham. I've been pretty big on the brand that I think these guys are trying to play. And I want Guelph to just stamp down and get 2 or 3 year contract. I think he has to earn it for sure. But I like what those guys are about. I like those big wrap up, take bodies down to the ground, cause a bit of havoc, hit a contest hard, don't worry about getting hurt. That's what I think they both bought, particularly Sam Durham as well this year. Kind of came in at halfway and gave us just played more games than I expected him to play, and I think did more than enough to hold his spot. So I want to see those guys continue on that trajectory.
Definitely, I think Durham can be a good winger. I love Guelphy. I think he is, work ethic personified. But I can't see, with his frame, with his talent, him taking a big step. I think he's always just going to be the player that you would love to have in your side, but he's probably going to miss out unless someone gets injured.
I think
and then there's a
hurt with having the 2 young blokes come through last year and how fast they developed. If we didn't have Perko and Cox, maybe there is room to get him on a wing or get him in that pocket. I think those 2 guys aren't going to get dropped for Guelph, who's had time to prove himself.
I think that when you're struggling to really pick your 22 and you've got blokes like Guelphy and Dylan Shield and Zach Reed that aren't getting in, these are good problems to have.
Yeah,
and these depth problems aren't problems we've had for a long time. And that's how blokes like, I think, Zerk Thatcher and Gleeson keep getting senior games is because we don't have a lot of that depth. So I think
we didn't. I think we definitely do now.
That's what I'm saying. And it's nice to have players of Dylan Shields' caliber who you say,
how do we fit in?
As good as you are, we can't fit you in the team at
a couple years ago, 5 clubs were doing everything they could to get that guy to play at the club, and now we don't think we can even fit him in.
Yeah.
Well, here's the players that I've got as stiff: Guelphy, Wright, Durham, Reed, Hobbs, Hurley. I'm gonna find them really challenging to make it into our best 22, and obviously they will, because there'll always be injuries. So they'll all play, in my opinion, at least 1 or 2 games, but it's so hard to fit those players, in my mind, in the best 22.
And that's the beautiful thing about football, is it can change on a dime when you're playing contact sport. So I probably expect that we would see all those players at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boys, who needs to have a good year? Who is desperate for a good year?
Russ? I'll go first, because I think it's going to be exactly the same for everyone. Shield. To me, he's on so much money. We've got a long contract for him that he's nowhere near finishing. So if you're not picking him in your best 22, you're paying all this money for him, and there's multiple years left on his contract. Like, to me, he needs to find a role on a wing, or maybe, like, I know he sort of played as a little bit of a half forward at the very end there. Like, he needs to find a role and absolutely cement it.
Here's one of my big calls. If Dylan Shield doesn't have that kind of year this year, then I think we start looking at an Adam Treloar situation where you're paying half his salary for another club to pay him, and you're freeing up $450 a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
We can't put him in the forward line. He doesn't have he can't finish. So it's all well and good breaking out of the packs and kicking it forward, but he's proven under pressure he can't kick. So he only plays it on the back line. But who do you, like we've been saying, it's chock-a block down there.
I've got a good feeling about Dylan Shield this year for no other reason than he's growing the most hideous goatee that I feel like maybe he's moving on from like having to protect a pretty boy image, and he's just ready to just grunt out. Bit like Josh Bridges post missing the games and coming back with that big gross goatee. Just here to work.
CrossFit and the Bombers chat isn't going to quite work.
So look, and again, I would love nothing more than to see Dylan Shield have the year we know he's capable of having. And I think if he is playing as a depth player and having a really good year, that only means really good things for the club.
Sorry, Russ, I interrupted you, mate.
Carry on to say about any other GWS?
Yeah, I think who needs to have a good year? I think if you ever want a GWS jumper and you're an Essendon club at the moment, you're ready to have a good year. For whatever reason, we seem to like the GWS development, but we look through and it's, Dev Smith needs to have a good year. Dylan Shield, obviously. Jai Caldwell better have a good year. James Stewart, if he gets picked, better have a good year. With 4 or 5 players taking up a couple of $1 million of salary cap that need to start earning the dollars they're on.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to breakout, and if he doesn't break out, go back to Francis, my boy. Like you're talking about, he needs to. This is his last year, I think.
Yep.
Too many issues, too much inconsistency.
We've spoken a bit today about overrated, big expectation players. Who is in your opinion, the most underrated player on our list?
Ooh, underrated. Let someone else go first.
Lachie.
Let's go with Laverde. I think the season he had last year, I can only see him continuing that on. And if you said Laverde is in our best 10 players to someone from another club, a supporter from another club, I think you'd get...
Who's that?
Who's that? What do you mean is in your best 10 players?
Yep.
But for me, he's underrated.
I went with Andrew Phillips. I think he's a player...
You love Flip.
I love Flip.
We've got no space for him.
I completely agree.
Draper, then Nick Bryan, and then maybe Wright, who plays as a pinch hitter.
Look, I think... I want Draper to be an All-Australian ruckman, and I think he's capable, but he's also had a string with some injuries, and I think the reason that Phillips has been given an extra year is that the club's worried that there could potentially be a gap between Draper not being fully fit and Nick Bryan not being fully ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think he's definitely one to keep on the list. I think, when I first saw him, I think we were playing Geelong in a pracky match last year. I think he kicked a couple of goals. He just was not getting beaten in the ruck. He doesn't get beaten. He's all over the ground. He has an incredible engine. The guy's got an incredible rig.
I was going to say, he's
For a big boy, he's got a big frame, and he doesn't lumber around like a, muppet. Like, you see those big ruckmen, they just, lumber around the field. They're super slow. He's quick. I think he's got a good turn, good shoe, good first step, and is a pretty decently accurate kick for goal as well when he gets the opportunity. So
he's proven he can take on the best. Like, he's taken on that game against Grundy 2 years ago when he first debuted.
Yep.
And just took it in pieces.
Yeah, and I think you put him up against ruckman like Grundy, who can have pretty big influences on the game, and I think that he can play, really negate that ruck role because he does have that work capacity in the engine. I think he's super heavily underrated.
I'm going to go with Langers for me. I know you.
Hey!
And I never thought I'd say he's the type of bloke that any other club's not going to be like. Any other supporter from anyone's going, Langford sticks out. That he's just that guy that we miss in the forward line. Takes set shots. You get it. He doesn't miss. He's a big body. He can take the mark. He can pinch out in the midfield a little bit, but he's found a niche sort of in that pocket and in the forward line. And I feel like we miss 2 goals when he's there.
Big body forward pocket.
Yeah.
I had Langford as my second most underrated, and I had Snelling as third.
I was close to saying Snell as well, like we talked about in the last pod. Like you miss him when he's not there.
Yeah, we mentioned both of those players, but obviously, as you said, from another club's perspective, they might not be asking much for these sort of players, but integral to our best team.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think when, like we did last year, you lose 4, 5, 6 games by less than 2 goals. Having someone that kicks like Langford and kicks 2 goals 0 as opposed to 1 goal 1 or 2 behinds, that's potentially a game.
Yeah.
That's potentially the difference between winning and losing.
How many games did we lose last year?
Yeah, if we're winning those 3 games that we've lost under a kick because we're not... The other thing to keep in mind too is when you start to kick points, it's contagious, right? And so is kicking goals. And if we have forwards that are kicking 85% conversion. Harry Jones, once he got over the yips, was incredible. Langers, we've talked about Tipper, right? If we're starting to kick, making the most of those opportunities, even if we're not getting a ton of those opportunities, but we're converting, like scoreboard pressure is a really big factor, and I think that obviously you want to kick more fucking goals than points.
Absolutely. I think that's actually the first season just gone where we have been accurate generally as a team, where we've kicked more goals than points in most of our games last season. And previously, I think almost half our games or more would be the opposite.
What if we kick straight? We could have won. What if? Yeah,
absolutely.
Champion data do that. What's it called? It's like the predicted outcome where it looks at the percentage of chances. They allocate what your score should have been.
Yep.
And I think for ours, typically we were above what we should have been. I think when you're a team like we are that's generally in a race to make finals, having a percentage above 100 is essentially what got us home in the end. And there's been so many times where we've been in the hunt, but with a percentage of 85, 90. And that probably as we kind of move through things that I want to see in this year coming is I want us to stop getting belted by top 4 sides by more than 10 goals. I think if we're going to mature as a side and percentage is going to play a role, I don't mind if we lose to those big teams that are contending for a flag, but no more 10-goal Desmonds. We need to learn how to stem the flow when momentum goes against us. Agree?
Yeah.
Good call?
Good call.
Cool.
Good call.
This was a question from you that you had as a talking point for today. One player, if you could bring one player from another club that would rocket us into contention for top 4 even flag, who would that player be?
I've got 2 sitting on the fence a little bit. Harry Mackay from Carlton, big key forward, kicked goals in a year where his team struggled. There was not a single player to help him. There was no foil for him, and he dominated. He had a great year. And the second to him is probably Aaron Norton, who plays a very similar role. If he kicked straight, I think he would have been the best forward of last season. Amazing contested mark, just sort of a little bit of a suspect shot, set shot on goal.
Yeah. The Carlton Football Club love having a Coleman medalist and finishing bottom 4, and I think it's hilarious. I agree with you. I had Aaron Norton as my number 1 / I would even take a Cam Bruce. I think we're missing a big bully in the forward line, or a Charlie Dixon. And Dixon's one of those guys that potentially goes missing in finals, but is always someone that the opposition are trying to build their defence around. And I think we're in agreement that that's what we're missing, is that real number one key forward who's going to be, in the contention for us to win a common medal.
Yeah, I'd agree with the big chuck wagon there. For me, it came down to we need, for me, that number one defender, and we still need the number one big body forward. So we need two big. I think we're missing big bodies cemented in those positions. Sorry. So I'd go like a Darcy Moore down back, even though he's from Collingwood. Someone that we know that is proven to just shut down players. Big body, shut a player down, and until we get that, I'm still not going to be 100% happy with our defence. I know there's a bit of depth there, but we still don't have that standout one player that's going to shut down the number one defender, the number one forward.
I hope Laverde becomes that player. I think Laverde's got a frame that Ridley doesn't have. I think we're going to end up building our defence around Jordan Ridley, and I would love to think that Laverde can be that guy.
The only thing I'd say with Laverde, can't play on monsters.
Yeah.
So he's not big enough to go with someone like Hawkins. He's not big enough to go with someone like Dixon. I think
the King brothers are probably way too big for him, and they're not even at size
and
yet.
that's why I think Stewart was forced to play that role. He's just that little bit taller, a little bit bigger. I think Laverde is perfect on a slice down from those, so key forwards that aren't absolute monsters. And you're right, a Darcy Moore type, I didn't even think of him, would be amazing for us. Would solidify our back line for the next 5 years, pretty much.
We need to free up Ridley, because he's not a one-on-one player. He's that guy that just takes these set marks.
Yeah, he's also a 20-year-old that's won a Crichton playing in the back line. I think Ridley kind of proves that if you can play that off your man role and still it just loves floating over the top and taking those grabs, you don't have to play the one-on-one wrestling.
Yeah, he's not the lockdown player, and that's they tried that at certain times, and it was proven that just let him run free and he'll do damage.
Yeah. Another talking point from you, mate. What round are we circling as our absolute must-win?
All right, I've got round 10 versus Tigers.
24 of them.
Okay. Each round until the grand final. No, round 10 versus Tigers. I think they've had the wood on us for so many years now. That'll be the Dreamtime game, I believe. I think we play them twice next year, or this season, sorry.
Do we?
As far as I'm aware, we play them in the final round of the year.
Is that because they finished in the bottom 8? They're seen as being easy opponents?
Well, so they're a team for us that we haven't beaten in so long. Yeah. And speaking of getting belted by top 4 sides, they're a team that I feel like, even last year, if we look at last season, with them until the final quarter, get ahead in the final quarter,
7 goals
and
up.
then they absolutely pants us in the last 10 minutes. And I think that's a game that if we can win, I think it'll say a lot for the group in terms of breaking a hoodoo and making a step towards the top 4.
I want a big scalp this year. If we're the team that we think we are, and we're building to be the team that we are, we need to stop getting belted for one, but I want us to beat a Geelong, a Port Adelaide, a Demons, or a Dogs on their day. So I want to see us take a big scalp, I think, in terms of what that does for confidence of the group, being able to, whether that's on the road or at home. I mean, I'm not too picky. I'll take either. But that's I want a big scalp on the win board, and when we're playing bottom 4 sides, I don't want to be nervous this year.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous when we're expected to win, and I think that again, as part of maturing as an organisation, you're coming in games expected to win for a reason, and I don't just want to limp over the line and be able to relax with 5 minutes left on the clock. Yeah, that Richmond game is a great example. If we're getting 6-7 goals up, how the fuck are we losing those games? And we do it every year, and that's what needs to stop.
For me, I circled the first 3 to 4 games.
Yep.
I'm
tough stretch.
Sick of coming in every year chasing our tails.
Yep.
We lose the first 4 games. We were 2-6 last year.
Yeah.
We always lose that first game. Even last year when we should have belted Hawthorn and we still lost. We're always coming in slow. We get our groove around 10, and then we're panicking that we need things to go our way and win every last 10. We've done it consistently for the last 5 years.
Yep.
Slow starts, we find the groove, and then we're just battling at the end and hoping other people lose and things go our way. So for me, it's not necessarily who we're playing, but we just need to get a fast start to the season and not chase our tails the whole year.
We play Geelong, we
round.
play Melbourne, we play Brisbane in the first 3 or 4, maybe 4 to 5 games.
Saying to AFL, just way to give us a great run.
Well, we need to learn how to beat those teams.
Look, and the fact that Truck's got the boys back, I think we started 2 to 3 weeks earlier than any other club in throughout all the clubs. We came back early. The boys wanted to come back early. It wasn't you have to come back early. The senior players came back early, so they got an extra three weeks on everyone else. They came back before everyone else did for the Christmas break. So I think we're not going to have that slow start, hopefully. And if we do lose those first 3 games, but at least we're in them and we're not out of them, because they are big clubs.
Tough games. Tough games. And I agree. I think that I don't mind losing if we're showing we're playing the game plan.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, losing the close one hurts so much more. But I would rather be losing. And again, it's percentage. I don't want to come in after 3 rounds and we've got a percentage of 40.
Yeah, we're going to match it with the big teams, absolutely.
Yeah. Big calls. I've been looking forward to this segment all week. Big calls, best case scenario. At the camera, look down the dome. Let's hear them. What are your big calls for this year? What are we going to see?
Do I go first?
You can go first.
I've got one big call for the season. Actually, hold on. I want to go second.
I'll go first. Big call. Top 4 making a prelim. I think that there's a lot of hype around us pre-season, and I think it's fairly valid. We are a team that made the step last year to the 8. Obviously, clearly weren't good enough to win a final. I think we can take another step, and best case scenario would be, top 4 finish and make a prelim.
I agree. Big call. We finished top 6, home final, win it. That's my big call for this year. And my other one, my sneaky little one, is Harry Jones kicks 50 goals and he's going to take our leading goal kicker for the week. And a little minor best case scenario, we don't drop a game to Hawthorn, Collingwood, Carlton, or Richmond this year.
All the arch rivals.
Yeah.
Don't drop a game to either of them.
Yeah.
How
we
many
beat
times?
all those rivals.
How many games do we play against them this season?
Good question. Are you looking up the fixture?
I've got another good call, a big call, best case scenario, Stringer for Brownlow, okay? What a finish to the season he had last year, last 10 rounds rated as the best player in the comp. I think he is fitter, I think his work ethic is better. From what I've seen in pre-season training, he is good to go. I think he can have a super consistent year, and he's a game winner for us, so that there is going to be games where he'll poll really well.
Do you think, I think a great idea by the club in keeping incentives in Jakey Stringer's contract and giving him triggers. I think all the players should be on that. Imagine if we'd had that with the Dylan Shield situation. But I agree. I think the way that he finished out last year, I don't think we've seen the best of Jake Stringer, which excites me. And I love finally having a player in our team that has that, in case of emergency, break the glass, Jake Stringer's in the middle. Because even if he's not winning the ball, he's switching up the structure of the opposition.
I think it was Stiff not getting more votes last year. He was number 1 rated player at the end of the season. Absolutely. And he was barely getting votes. And
anti-Essendon sentiment from the umpires.
Yeah, the umpires. I generally feel that players have a good season, that the following season the umpires look out for him a little bit more. So I think Jake Stringer is primed.
All right.
That's a big call.
Big call.
Big call.
They're the only kinds of calls we make on this show.
It could be the biggest call I've made, and I called this, I think, mid last year. Did I call this in the group chat?
Russ has been calling a flag since we beat Adelaide round 1 2017.
I don't make any calls.
The biggest possible call.
I called this one last year, and you laughed at me, but Alex Rance will play for an Essendon team this year. He's come back to the club as a defensive coach. He's ripped. Alex Kingy said that he's going to have a 20% chance of putting on an Essendon jumper this year. Okay. After everyone's stopped at it.
30, 31.
Well, the guy runs Ironmans for shits and giggles. If anyone can just slot back in from a conditioning point of view.
Maybe it might be a VFL game, but I know we can't pick him up in the mid-season draft because he hasn't nominated yet. He retired and he had to go through the draft this year to be nominated mid-season draft, which is what the big sausage up in GWS did.
That is a big call.
That's a huge
call. And that's a call I would love to see. Again, who comes out? Redmond.
Who comes
you take
out?
Redmond out? You take Redmond
take
out?
Take your pick.
Rance?
Oh, Stuart. He surely plays on
Stuart's
the number 1.
I haven't got it. He's right.
Stuart's not even an emergency.
Stuart, Francis, whoever's going to take that big body number 1 forward, I think Rance could play that, and he's proven that in the past, obviously.
You think Rance, after a few years out of the game, could line up on Hawkins round 1 if he was fit?
I think he's got more chance of playing on a big-bodied forward than someone's a little bit quicker. I think if he has this time out of of football, which he has, I think he's more chance of playing a one-on-one style role than intercept defender, where you've just got to be so fit and in tune with the game.
If he wasn't still conditioned, I'd say no chance. The fact he's still conditioned, I think even having that 2 years of awareness out, you'd still play.
Look, there's definitely a level of aerobic capacity when it comes to conditioning. But as someone who's trying to make a comeback to the sport of AFL in your 30s, let me tell you, getting hit while running and being fit is a completely different level of conditioning and fitness that's required. And 2 or 3 years, how many has he had out of the game now?
2.
3 years?
No,
3?
2.
This will be his third?
Well, this will be his third, yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time to go and to age up and not get belted around and come back.
He's still been playing...
he should be fresh.
He's still been
He
playing...
should well rested.
I think he's still playing country footy. Look, I know it's a completely different level, but it's not like he's been sitting on the couch.
He played a VFL game for us last year.
Yeah, that's how it all started, because he was up...
I've never seen someone as excited as Russ.
I've been crying out for a big defender for a long time.
Boys, big calls, worst case scenarios. What are the sad things, the things that could go wrong this year?
I'll start this
Russ,
one.
go for it, mate.
For me, my biggest fears are when being Melbourne 2 years ago, like peaking maybe a little bit too early with a young list, and then get that momentum, make the finals, similar to St Kilda, I guess, like you spoke about before.
Last year.
Making those finals, get all this hype, all the boys are revved up, then put
Russ is revved up.
Revved up.
Getting me revved up, like every single year you buy into these things, and then to come out and be like that team and we drop off for the next couple of years. That's, for me, could be worst case scenario. The boys are on a nice trajectory now. I'd like them to just finish in the similar position. Even if we don't make finals, maybe just below it. My biggest fear is going back those 5 places again on the bottom tier again.
Look, if we won 14 games this year and missed finals, I would still call that a good year.
Yeah.
You couldn't win 14 and miss finals, though.
If
we win every game
and don't miss finals.
And don't win a grand final, I'm okay with that.
I wouldn't be okay with that. I've got a big call. Worst case scenario, we get pummeled by Carlton when we play them. If we lose by 10 plus goals, that's one of the worst case scenarios for us as a
Matt
football club.
Cowan will be, who's probably listening, insufferable for the next 12 months.
We're not having a podcast that week if we lose.
and also outside the 8. I think if we finish outside of the 8, I think it's a fail for our season. If we look back on recent history, we make the finals, we get annihilated in week 1. Next year, we don't make the finals. That's happened for the last 5 or more seasons, and losing to Western Bulldogs when there was so many signs of improvement, I would hate to see us, as you said, go back one step.
Would you be upset if we make finals and lose in the first round again, like the voodoo says we do?
I want to break the hoodoo for sure, but I think I don't have a problem with us finishing 8th, but if we're going to finish 8th, I want us finishing 8th 2 or 3 games clear of 9th. I don't want to scrap in, exhaust the last 3 or 4 rounds just to make it in to get done first round of finals.
Yeah,
Absolutely agree with that.
All right, my worst case scenarios, and I've got one big worst case scenario, and I've got 2 emotional worst case scenarios.
Okay.
My worst case scenario is we make top 4 and then exit in straight sets.
No,
That
why
is
would you
my
even say that?
Terrible
Why would you even
call.
say that?
We make big calls. That's my worst case scenario. Is we finally get in there. We have a great year, and it comes apart. That would absolutely devastate me.
Touch wood.
Touch plenty of wood. My worst case scenario is emotionally. We've seen the best of Tipper.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would crush me as well, and I think that there's a possibility of that, as much as I would not like to see it happen. And my other one is there's no goodbye game for Hurls, and we don't see him come back at all.
Yeah, I think they're 2 very realistic ones too.
Big season predictions. Russ, where are we finishing?
I think 7th or 8th. I think we're right around that mark again. Still a few unknowns with some of the big players coming through. There's a lot of upside, and I'd just be happy doing what we did last year, to be honest. Just keeping those momentum, not going down, keeping there. I'd even be happy if we make it first round of finals, we go out again. I don't really care about the media hype saying it's a curse, something like that. I'd just be happy being at the same mark again and just being consistently getting ready for next year. I know Run hasn't brought in a lot of players this season purely because he doesn't want to mix up the team too much. He wants that consistency. We've seen the last sort of 5 years, a lot of players coming in and coming out, and like I spoke about before, starting late, so people trying to figure out where their spots are. I think this season we can start the season, everyone know their positions, they know the game plan, we're not tinkering at the start of the season. So for me, just consistency, getting up to that 8th spot.
We will finish 5th this year with a percentage over 120. That's my prediction.
That's a big call. Are we going back a step? Are we going back to big call? I've got us finishing top 6. Now, I think the next step isn't like winning a grand final this coming season. I don't think we're ready for that. Our list is too young. I think that finishing in the 8 again, and the tendency is that we'd finish 8th in previous years and not really be able to match it with the 5th best side in the comp, and we get balled out that first week of the finals. I think if we can finish top 6, then you're going favourites into that first week of the finals, and I'd expect us to win, taking that step forward, and then it's a leapfrog after that to pushing into the top 4 and contending.
I'd love a home final against an interstate team.
Yeah,
that'd be great. All right, boys, we've got, I think we've covered a lot today. Preview, we've got our predictions. We want to see things going on. A couple of weeks until the first practice match against the Saints.
55 days till round 1.
Yeah, at the time of recording. So we'll sit down between now and then. We'll preview that game a little bit more once we have a little bit more idea of what the team looks like. And until then, go Bombers. We'll keep an eye on the group chat.
All right, let's do it.
3 bombs coming out.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Lovely.